Thank you. Mayor Boughton, on your website it states that you believe Connecticut's recently enacted gun law, and I quote, went too far to curtail the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens and did not do enough to address school security or mental health. And had you been governor, and I quote, the bill would have been very different, end quote. What way specifically would the law be different, and if elected, would you repeal it?
Thank you very much. It's my concern, and it has been my concern about the bill, that the elephant in the room in terms of Connecticut and really the United States of America, and I see this every day on the streets of Danbury, is that we have a mental health crisis in this country. And unfortunately, this bill did very little to address the mental health crisis in this country. Think about what we decided to do back in the 70s and 80s. We got rid of all of our inpatient care. And we said, no, that's inhumane, that's terrible, we can't do that. We're going to have outpatient care. So we released all these folks and put them back out into the street. And what happens is, those folks never got the care because the state didn't honor its commitment to helping them. And so they end up on the street, they end up living under bridges, they end up and walking around in awful times tragic situations. So our entire approach to mental health care has been horrendous, and this bill is just a perfect example of that. We spent all of our time arguing over what size magazine we're going to have and what kind of part of the weapon and how should it look and all these other things, but we ignored the elephant in the room in terms of that. When we talk about school safety and security, this bill spent $15 million, the first iteration spent $15 million to harden all the schools in the state of Connecticut. $15 million. I have 22 school sites in the city of Danbury and multiple parochial school sites. I would need $150 million just for the city of Danbury. But you know what? This governor found money to give $31 million to Bass Pro Shop to go to Bridgeport. This governor found $150 million to pay Bridgewater to go from Westport to Stamford. So you tell me where the priorities of this administration lie. They certainly don't lie with the safety and security of our children. And that is the obscene, what I call obscene about this bill. It's been an absolute travesty that we really impinged on law-abiding folks out there, and we ignored the most important thing that we can face, which is going to be expensive, it's going to cost money, but it's a mental health crisis in this country.
Kathy, comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Jeez. Sandy Hook was a tragedy. I carry a gun. I've carried a gun for 30 years. I'm a hunter. I was at the Capitol when this all happened as a law. Would have never signed the law. I could tell you personally that me and 200,000 men that are licensed, men and women that are licensed to carry a firearm in Connecticut, wish we could have been at Sandy Hook that day. The outcome would have been different. But the schools were basically set up in this country and have been, which have made them a shooting gallery. And so we needed to spend money, and we should always have thought and should spend money on school safety, but the mental health issue wasn't addressed. The magazine capacity, I had to register my magazines that had 11 bullets because there were 11 and one less. It was a knee-jerk reaction, and the tragedy has been politicized by I believe the liberal left has incremental legislative designs, and they're going to continue with that. And that's the heartbreak so many people in the gun world and the gun rights world feel.
John McKinney.
Look, it's been my great honor to represent Newtown in the state senate for the past 15 years. There are 36 state senators, only one represents Newtown. I had friends in the building that day. I saw friends and constituents lose their children. Nobody wants to go through that. And it was my honor and my obligation to represent that town, and I don't regret what happened. Listen, it was not a matter of if Dan Malloy and the Democrats were going to pass a bill. It was what bill were they going to pass. That's a fact. They had the votes. We had to work with them to get a bill that was not as bad as what they were going to do. They wanted to confiscate guns and magazines. They didn't. They wanted annual registrations. They didn't get it. They wanted to limit your right to buy 1 gun a month. They didn't get that, and many other things as well. Over 600 schools have received money for the state to harden their schools. More will get money this year. I have a bill to include private and parochial schools as well. You can't put too much money in a pot because the Democrats will go grab it. And we did pass laws to identify young kids with mental health illness and to provide coverage for 18 to 24-year-olds, because everybody knows that's where young men can produce mental illness and there's no coverage out there. There is much more to do, but that bill did make a good first step in dealing with mental health issues.
Barney Boucher.
You know, there are many bills that come before us that often challenge or conflict with our own personal views and those with our constituents. As governor, you really need to consider the positions of all residents of the state. But the residents of my district overwhelmingly supported the gun bill, some wanting to go much further than this bill. Hundreds continue to fight for changes such as microstamping, public lists, insurance, confiscation, you know, not banning prior bans prior to 1993, which is what they're currently concerned about. However, I would not support any more incursion. In fact, unlike others, I voted for amendments in the Senate that would have removed some of the more problematic aspects of this bill. The portion of the bill that I was responsible for was a school security bill, which was unanimously supported by all sides. We invited experts from all over the country on this. We used what they said. We made sure we had threat assessment teams in the school. We provided some funding certainly for hardening some of the schools, for security cameras and so forth. However, I agree that the mental health issue was the most dominant issue that we should have addressed. Involuntary commitment should have been addressed. The closing down of Fairfield Hills Mental Health Institution in Newtown should have been addressed. And that is the politically incorrect thing that many do not want to talk about, and I believe that discussion should be on the table going forward.